What's good, NBA fans? This is your man Dalton representing Ballers Delight, and in this video I will be discussing why I believe that Bill Russell is better than Wilt Chamberlain. Now, before I break down why Russell was overall the more impactful player, we need to understand the era that these players played in. Goal attempts per game in the 60s ranged from the high 90s to nearly 110 per game, with shooting percentages being by far the lowest of any era. This is mainly due to the run-and-gun, fast-paced style of play pioneered by Bob Cousy and the Celtics in the late to mid-50s. So teams were scoring a lot, but not really caring about the quality of shots like teams do today. So yes, Wilt's stats were jaw-dropping, but they came in an era absolutely tailored for them to be as great as they were. On top of this, there's plenty of evidence suggesting that Wilt's top priority in basketball was to achieve statistical dominance instead of team dominance, which we will get into later. There's very limited game footage on Wilt and Russell in the 60s. My analysis of the two players will be on all of the available film that I've been able to scrap together, as well as stories from people who were there at the time, and evaluating each player's impact on their individual teams. Now, the common argument for Wilt being better than Russell is, oh, well, Wilt was a better player, but Russell was just on a better team. Then people will list the amount of Hall of Famers that Russell played alongside and make the conclusion that Wilt just never had enough help to deal with the Celtics. However, there are several issues with this statement. For Wilt's first 3 seasons, he played alongside 3 Hall of Famers, Paul Arizin, Guy Rodgers, and Tom Gola. In his next 3 seasons, he would play alongside Rodgers, Gola, and Nate Thurmond, always having at least 2 Hall of Famers on his roster. When he got traded to the Sixers, he played with Hal Greer, Chet Walker, and Billy Cunningham, all, again, Hall of Famers. Then he got traded to the Lakers, where he played with Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, and Gail Goodrich, again, all Hall of Famers. As you can see, Wilt's teams often had 2 to 3 Hall of Famers on the roster, and actually he never even had a season with fewer than 2 on his team. Now, let's compare this to Russell's support. While yes, comparing sheer Hall of Famers, Russell does have the edge, but let's take a closer look. Tom Sanders, Frank Ramsey, and Casey Jones all made the Hall of Fame without ever making an All-Star team. That's 3 players that basically made the Hall of Fame for winning multiple rings alongside Bill Russell. If we exclude these guys, Russell played with 5 other Hall of Famers throughout his career. Those being Sam Jones, John Havlicek, Bob Cousy, Bill Sharman, and Tom Heinsohn. Now let's compare these guys to the best 5 that Wilt played with. That being Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, and Billy Cunningham. The disparity in teammates isn't what the narrative makes it out to be. In fact, a solid argument can be made that Wilt played with more talent in his career. So you're probably thinking to yourself, Dalton, you're on crack. How the hell did Wilt put up these monstrous numbers alongside better talent and still lose time and time again to the Celtics? Well, this is where we can clearly see that Russell is the more valuable player. If winning more MVPs and championships and having the Finals MVP named after Russell wasn't enough to convince you, then let's just take a look at how they impacted their individual teams. Russell got drafted to the Celtics in 1956, and the previous 2 seasons they were an average to a slightly above average team. They also ranked last and third to last in defensive rating these seasons. Keep in mind that 3 of the quote-unquote Hall of Famers that carried him were on these teams. Russell comes along and the Celtics immediately win the championship and skyrocket to first in defense. The next season, after going up 2-0 in the NBA Finals against the Hawks with Bob Pettit, Russell got injured and his quote-unquote stacked team of Hall of Famers dropped 4 straight games without him. With Russell, the Celtics beat the Hawks in 3 different playoff series. From then on until 1967, the Celtics would never lose a playoff series, winning 8 straight championships. In fact, Bill Russell, while healthy, only lost 1 playoff series of his career, of course to Wilt Chamberlain's 76ers, who at the time had the best record in history. After just 1 loss, Red Auerbach handed Bill Russell the authority of being coach of the team, while Russell was 33 years old. He would accept the task, beating the same Sixers who took him out the previous season, and then the next season, defeating Wilt's new super team in Los Angeles as a player coach at age 34. This is absolutely ridiculous to me. The man lost once in his career, became coach past his prime, and beat the only team that was able to defeat him while he was healthy, and then beat an even better team the next season as heavy underdogs. Imagine if LeBron became player coach in 2017 and beat the Warriors with KD at the tail end of his career. That's basically what Russell did. Russell's teams were also never great offensively and only had an above league average offensive rating once during his tenure. This is incredibly impressive because the Celtics' defense was historic, ranking first in the league every season Russell played besides once, when they were second. It was clear that it was the Celtics' defense, not their offense, that led to their historic success. This is exactly why Russell was regarded as by far the best player on the Celtics and by many people at the time, the greatest player ever. Russell was never a consistently dominant offensive player, but he was the king of adapting his game to his team's needs. He led the team in scoring in the playoffs once and even assists twice. He explained his style of play is one that doesn't require teammates to change their game to his, but rather vice versa. Russell was known for protecting the rim, grabbing the rebound, and giving an outlet pass to start his team's famed fast break where they scored most of their points. If not, they would frequently run dribble handoffs and cuts out of the mid-post with Russell's great passing ability. It was only if the offense was stagnant and had no other options that Russell would be aggressive, never forcing a shot. Even though Bill wasn't the dominant offensive player that Wilt was, some of his playoff performances prove that he was better than his career numbers indicate. We need to keep in mind that the era that Russell played in isn't one that valued efficiency to the degree that's valued today. In fact, Russell was above average efficient from the field for his time. In the 1965 finals, Russell set the NBA Finals field goal percentage record with 70% shooting over the 5-game series. In the 1962 finals, he dropped an impossibly good 23 points per game, 27 rebounds per game, and 6 assists per game while shooting 54% from the field, with a legendary 30-point and 40-rebound game in Game 7. My point is that Russell could be great on the offensive end when needed, but his game was all about doing what was best for the team, not for himself. In Wilt's case, his motive seemed to be that the team should play to his needs. Wilt's coach of the Lakers even agreed, saying, "Ask yourself why Russell has 11 championship rings and Wilt only has 2. Wilt would say, well, Russell had great players around him. He did, but the players would leave, new ones would come in, and Boston would still win. The one constant was Russell. He would adjust to any situation. The difference between Russell and Wilt was this. Russell would ask, what do I need to do to make my teammates better? And then he'd do it. Wilt honestly thought that the best way for his team to win was for him to be in the best possible setting. He'd ask, what's the best situation for me? That's from Butch Van Brendikoff, the coach of the 1968 and 1969 Lakers. Early in his career, he was known for going to the scorers table frequently to check on his stats. Later in his career with the Sixers, he boldly proclaimed that he would lead the league in assists, a feat which he would accomplish but by hindering his teammates. Hal Greer is on record saying Wilt would only pass to the players who he knew wouldn't dribble before shooting, increasing the chance of him getting an assist. This is just ridiculous to me. Wilt clearly had the capability to be a great playmaker and make those around him better, but was too inwardly focused with his own goals. When you're only giving your teammates the ball in hopes that it'll get you recognition for your unselfishness, you're not a leader. You're 2016 Rajon Rondo playing in the post. Assist hunting and stat padding were as real back then as they are now, and Wilt was the Russell Westbrook of his era in that regard. Now, Wilt did have an absolutely incredible 1967 season, which resulted in his team winning a record number of games at the time and the championship at the end of it. This was one of the only seasons where Wilt did play team ball, but even then, it took a while for him to come around to the idea. Well, that's being incredibly generous. The tension between Wilt, his teammates, and coaches built so high about his selfish style of play that he nearly fought his own coach, Alex Hannum, before the season started. John Taylor wrote about this in his book, The Rivalry, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and the Golden Age of Basketball. It reads, Chamberlain made it clear that he did not like to be told what to do. He complained to reporters about Hannum's strategy, and Hannum insisted to the same men that Chamberlain was going to have to change. The tension built until one night. Hannum and Chamberlain got into a violent locker room argument and avoided coming to blows only when other players intervened. Hannum, deciding a showdown was necessary, ordered the other players out and then took off his jacket. "You've been fighting me as a coach all the way," Hannum said. "Now fight me as a man." Chamberlain glared at Hannum for a long moment and then folded, saying, "Aw, I can't fight you, Alex." Despite grudgingly yielding to Hannum's authority, he still resented the coach and complained about him to Guy Rodgers, one of his closest friends on the team. But Rodgers thought Hannum's strategy was obviously paying off. Rodgers wanted to see the Warriors win, and it vexed him that Chamberlain was willing to put his own pride ahead of the best interests of the team. "You've got to bow down, Wilt," Rodgers told Chamberlain. "Admit it, Cat, we're a much better club with you feeding us part-time and then getting back to protect our basket." Now, I want you to answer me this simple question. Who do you want on your team? The guy who damn near fought his own coach because he wouldn't cooperate, or the guy that was given the coach role by the previous coach and still won back-to-back championships in his last 2 seasons? In fact, there are multiple accounts of Wilt's stat padding in playoff games after Russell locked him up when the game was still competitive. Now, if you want to take a look at these, go ahead and pause the video here, but there are more than a few times where Wilt was guilty of this in the playoffs. So, knowing that Wilt's playoff numbers are already inflated due to his stat padding, it comes as a major surprise that Wilt averaged 8 less points per game in the playoffs versus the regular season for his career, and 12 less points per game in the finals. This brings us to the times where Wilt just flat out underperformed when it matters most. In 1961, Wilt got swept by a sub-500 team in the first round, while his poor shooting from the free throw line costed his team 2 close wins. The next season, while Russell's Celtics prevailed in Game 7 against Wilt's Warriors, Wilt was held to just 22 points that game. Let me remind you that this is the guy who averaged 50 points per game during that regular season. Yet, when it mattered, a rookie on his own team outscored him. In 1969, his own teammate Jerry West won Finals MVP, and Wilt still wet the bed in Game 7, breaking 9 free throws in a game that they lost by 2. The next season, with Russell out of the way, it seemed like Wilt would help the Lakers to their first title in LA, right? Wrong. Willis Reed absolutely sunned Wilt in the first 4 games of the finals when he was healthy, dropping 32 a night on his head while holding him to just 19 a night on the other end. In the pivotal Game 7, with Willis Reed famously walking out on one leg, Wilt scored just 22 points and made just 1 of his 11 free throws that he took. I don't want to nitpick his career because that's not the point of this video, even though I kind of made a video about Kareem doing that. But that's not the point. This video is about the fundamental differences in the output that you're receiving by having either of these centers on your team. The point is that Wilt was on the cusp of either eliminating Russell or winning a ring multiple times, but didn't pull through because he was either too stat obsessed, too timid, or both. Bill Bradley of the Knicks even claimed that Wilt was happier with losing than winning, as he could fall back on his monstrous numbers to excuse him. Hall of Famer Rick Barry was quoted as saying, "When it comes down to the closing minutes of a tough game, an important game, he doesn't want the ball. He doesn't want any part of the pressure. It is at these times that greatness is determined, and Wilt doesn't have it. There is no way you can compare him to a pro like Bill Russell or Jerry West. Those are clutch competitors." Let me add that Rick Barry prefaced his comments by saying, "A lot of people have said that Wilt is a loser, but few of them have been players. Few players have the guts to say this about a guy who might be their teammate or take their anger out on them on the court. But I'll say what most players feel. Wilt is a loser." He has a complex about this. He thinks the world is picking on him. He resents criticism, but he does not take advantage of his incredible natural ability. Hell, Wilt Chamberlain himself agreed with this, once saying, "To Bill, every game was a challenge, a test to his manhood. He took the game so seriously that he threw up in the locker room before almost every game. But I tend to look at basketball as a game, not a life or death struggle. I don't need scoring titles or NBA championships to prove that I'm a man. There are too many other beautiful things in life to get that emotionally wrapped up in basketball." I think Bill knew I felt that way, and he both envied and resented my attitude. On the one hand, I think he wished that he could learn to take things easier too. On the other hand, I think he may have felt that with my natural ability and willingness to work hard, my teams could have won an NBA championship every year if I was as totally committed to victory as he was. I wish I had won all those championships, but I really think I grew more as a man in defeat than Russell did in victory. So, in case you didn't just hear that, Wilt Chamberlain literally admits that if he wanted to win as bad as Russell, then he easily could have, but he didn't because he liked losing more. Now, you just tell me who you would rather have on your team. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ballers Delight. I'm sorry that there's a little bit of delay on this video, but I just moved into college again, so there's a lot going on, people moving in. Didn't have a lot of time to record, work and all that crap. So thanks for your patience, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment, like, subscribe. Holla back at your boy.